You're listening to Dropping Pins, a story-based learning series from the Okayest Hunter podcast, hosted by Derek Melkor, and aimed at helping you hone your whitetail hunting skills. You'll hear the aha moments when known and unknown proven whitetail killers started consistently putting mature bucks on the ground.
All right. Good morning or good evening to everybody. Welcome to the Dropping Pins podcast. I'm your host, Derek Melkor, live from the basement. Today we've got a guest who hasn't done some podcasts for a little while, but a guy that I've been following on social media for a while. And if you've seen him on social media, maybe you've known him for his turkey hunting expertise and pretty awesome travels in the spring chasing gobblers. We're bringing on a gentleman named Devin Duncan, who not only is a turkey hunting expert, but has killed some really good bucks in some tough areas down in the southeast of the United States here. And one thing that I think is really cool about Devin and kind of how he came up in hunting, and he can tell us a little bit more about his background. But he's a guy who I kind of see a little bit of myself in that Devin's father was a really successful hunter, and he kind of learned a lot of the ropes from his dad and being in the woods with his dad from the things that I've seen. And that's a lot of where I gained most of my woodsmanship and ideas about deer hunting from an early age, was just following my dad around. And guys like us are just really, really lucky to have that learning curve flattened out tremendously just by following around somebody who's really skilled. And then obviously you take your own ideas and thoughts and techniques and put them to the use, which is exactly what Devin has done, and it's definitely produced some awesome results. So I'd like to welcome to the show today, Devin Duncan. Thanks for joining us on Dropping Pins. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I was really excited to get you on. We've been trying to work out schedules. Devin is a really busy family man with a business on the side, and I'm not super busy with the work stuff yet, but I got the kids here. So today he messaged me and said, "Hey, I think I can make it happen." So I scrambled downstairs, threw the computer on. I was like, "Let's do it, buddy. Let's do it." So
yeah,
it's good to have you on. I see you got the gobbler in the background behind you.
Yeah.
How many different states do you hit for turkey in the spring, Devin?
Turkey hunting in the spring is just, I just want to hunt from early as the seasons come in, that I can get off from work and start hitting the road for as long as I can until season goes out. Like, I'm not really no real goals of hunting this state or notching states. I'd be fine hitting the same 4, 5, 6 states. Really, I just want to hunt them as long as I can. It's not a greed thing or trying to kill X amount of gobblers. I just want to wake up and experience as many springs as I can. So. Or spring mornings. So it's really just extending my season. It's not about killing as many turkeys as I can. It's just experiencing as many spring mornings as I can from time seasons start opening up till it goes out. So that's kind of where the traveling turkey hunting thing. But I started traveling turkey hunting late 2000s, 2009.
Very cool. And that was a really, really humble answer, because you shoot a lot of turkeys, man. You're very good at it. You're dedicated. You're very good at it. So
I'm not very good with people saying I'm really good at killing turkeys, or I'm a really good turkey hunter, or I just being myself. It's just what I love to do.
Hell yeah. Getting into our Dropping Pins episode here, I'm going to ask you the question we start with everybody, and that's, could you explain to the listeners just a little bit about the terrain you grew up hunting, what kind of terrain you're hunting now, so when you do get into one of the stories, we kind of have a little basis of where your kind of knowledge base comes from?
Yeah, sure. I'm in Western Virginia. There's George and Thomas Jefferson National Forest. We have 1.6 million some acres of national forest in Virginia. There's some state land, but it's predominantly national forest. Just born and raised hunting. Dad had me hunting and fishing before I could even walk. I didn't have a choice to be a hunter and a trout fisherman and in the woods. And I fell in love with coon hunting for a while. So just a little bit of everything. But terrain wise, we're in the Appalachians and Blue Ridge, right in the heart of it. very, it's pretty diverse. Um, uh, it is and it isn't. That some chunks of land can be pretty monotonous, closed canopy. Well, it's predominantly all closed canopy. I mean, you got some select cuts and some clear cuts here and there, um,
A
but
lot of hardwoods,
yeah,
like open
hardwoods
mature
and
hardwood.
mountain laurel and rhododendron and some places, you're holding on the saplings and limbs, and I've got in some pretty sketchy spots. Rocks is what's dangerous. You get in some rock batters and you slip, and your foot goes in a hole and your body goes forward. You snap a leg. That's always been my biggest fear. And actually, I was in a really nasty place last year. That the only thing I could think of was I can't wait to get out of here and get back to my truck because it was so nasty. It just every step was a rock, and I actually almost I could feel myself living out my worst fear. Like my foot went into a hole and I felt my body weight going forward and my leg wasn't moving. And I was just like, it's getting ready to snap. But luckily I got my balance and I'm just like, man, as soon as I get out of here, and I like rough, nasty spots, but that is one spot that I don't have any desire to go back to.
Yeah, man, the rocky terrain, no matter where you are, whether you're out west, that kind of shit, you got to have the right pair of boots for that. If you don't have some stiff, taller boots, man, those ankles, I mean, you can really get in trouble. You mess up your ankle, break a foot when you're in some of that stuff, and nobody knows where you're at. You don't have, I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna find yourself in a pickle.
Insoles are really important too, because people's like, what boots do you recommend? What boots do you like? And I tell them, I use several different pairs of Crispies, but really what I'm recommending ain't the feel that they're going to get, because I got, they're expensive, like 300, I don't know what they are, 260 or $300 pair of sheep feet insoles. But through my work, we have HSA, health savings account, and you can buy those with your HSA.
Awesome.
So I got a pair once I learned that you could buy them with your HSA money, and it turns your boot into it makes like your boot 4-wheel drive the way, uh, your sole of your boot, in the middle of your boot, they get narrow. Like it's like the bottom of your foot, but the sheep feet insole is as wide as is like this wide. So it makes the bottom of your boot wider, and you can tighten up your laces and secure your foot. And, it really, it's hard to explain, but it kind of turns my boot into a custom boot kind of.
That's awesome.
So if I tell you this is the boot I like, it's not you're going to get that boot, and it's not going to be the same.
Insole.
Tell you that, that's one thing. But where are we going with it?
Yeah, no. Hey, well, I just, speaking of the terrain, and maybe I'm totally off here, but I swear you had posted pictures, because you had gone on a spree for a little while where you were posting some older photos of, I think, hunting with your dad and whatnot. And did I see in a couple of them, did you guys use like mules or like pack mules to like get up into some of the stuff that you were hunting? That was really cool, because I'd not heard of that anywhere east of the Mississippi,
Yeah, my dad got mules. It's about 20 years now that he got Jasper, because I was in high school, and I think he got it early in high school. So it's about 20 years he'd been using them. But the dad knew that he was going to get. I just got a notification on my computer. Did you hear that?
I did not hear.
Okay, I just want to make sure that ding. I just want to make sure that ding didn't come through on y'all's end. But he, Dad always liked hunting way back in the middle of nowhere, and he knew that he was, going to age, and he thought, well, I'm gonna get me a mule, and you can hit a main ridge or a trail and take it to the top of the mountain, and he said, I'm gonna figure this out, while I'm young, and then so that's where that started, and so they wasn't really mind just tag along with him once in a while. I might be doing my own thing and then go with him a day with, he had two mules, and but yeah, that's cool. You got to get up earlier to get moving and get the mules loaded up and drive, and you can't just fly to where you're going because you got mules in a trailer. So you got to account for that. And if you can camp there, it's best. But lots of times that's not what Dad done yet. So you got to get up a little earlier to get moving and then get the mules saddled up, and you got to get there safe to wherever you're parking, and then but you can ride to the top of the mountain. You can pull. Sometimes we're hunting as close as a couple hundred yards from the truck to 2-3 miles, away from the truck. But with the mules, you could you could pull 1,000 foot, 500 foot or 1,000 foot or 2,000 foot, and you haven't sweat a drop.
Yeah, that's a game changer.
Your socks and your boots are dry on the inside. Your back and you're not sweat from your butt crack to the back of your head.
Been there before.
So it's mid late November, and you get to the top of the mountain and you haven't sweated a drop. So that really helps you stay comfortable throughout the morning and the day when you hadn't sweat. And then you could hunt out from there. So if you rode in 2 miles and pulled 1,000, 2,000 foot elevation, and then that gets you up in that country, and then you can hunt out there. And it was nice. It's cool because I borrowed one year from him and kept it at my place, and it kind of spoils you because you find yourself only going hunting where you can access the mule up a trail or something. So I kind of got away from it because I just found myself, not that I couldn't kill deer doing that, and then I had him, and I feel like I had to use him because he was there at my place and I was borrowing him. So
you're feeding them. It's like, I got to put this thing to use.
Yeah. So it's a place for it, especially as you get older. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, because I mean, you can debone them and skin them out and throw the meat in the saddlebags and throw the head on the back and the cape or whatever and ride out. And it's fun. It's a fun experience. Yep.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing. And just to think that, if you're going back to an area that's, heavily populated, like trailhead stuff, like if you don't have to start working until you get back to the area you want, where other guys are having to walk 1.5 miles, climb 1,000 feet, like you're going to be fresher. It's going to be better. Like I just thought it was really interesting and cool when you posted those pictures, because I just haven't heard of that being done a lot out there. So that was a cool thing.
Yeah, and I mean, you can kill deer close to the mule. Like you can park your mule and take the saddle off and get them tied up and secured, and depending on where you're at on the I killed a good buck. I wasn't 75 yards from where I tied the mule up, and I was to that spot from the truck to there is 2.7 miles, which really doesn't sound that far, but when you're going up a mountain, that's a little ways.
Yeah, you're busting your butt.
Yeah, especially if you're really wanting to be there before daylight. So
it makes me think of you ever seen the movie Jeremiah Johnson?
Yeah,
old Robert Redford movie.
Yeah,
the old elk don't know how many legs a horse has got. Stupid.
Yeah, and
sneak up behind the horse.
And what's really cool over the years riding them is you'd be walking a trail, and if they jerk their head and throw them ears up there on the side of the mountain, they heard or smelled or seen something, and you'll look and there'll be a flock of turkeys or a deer will be standing there, or your bear will take off. If they jerk that head and throw them ears, they heard something's there. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's neat, man.
There was actually there's been some guys that come up here from North Carolina and camp and hunt the national forest, and they've been using mules for several decades in this country.
Very cool.
But no, I had really never heard of anybody local doing it. I knew some locals that paid. I think it was a man and woman. They had a mule or two or three, and they would put their camp on it, and they would go up on the mountain and drop them off and leave them and come back and get them like a week or two later, however long they stayed. They would pay them to get their camp up in there, and then they'd stay and hunt, and then they come back and get them, stuff like that. But
very cool.
Nobody really heard many people doing it, so it's cool. Yeah, it's just another element to it.
Yeah, something that can, one of the tools of the trade that if you think about it enough, you start to devise good ways. And your dad had the foresight to know, hey, I'm not going to be pulling deer out of this country into my, that was a good idea.
As long as you're healthy enough to take care of them and get up on the back, put the saddle on one, get up on the back of one, but that's a whole loaded thing right there. You just don't want to die. Oh, that's a good idea. I'm gonna go get a mule. It's a big responsibility. You got to take care of them. You got to shoe them. You got to vet bills. In a lot of instances, it's more trouble than it's worth, really, honestly.
I guess we can use that as our segue there. Thanks for going into some detail about that. I was just kind of curious, but and hunting with your dad and all your experience up in the national forest and in that mountain Appalachia area, what are some things or a story, something that happened to you that kind of gave you a little bit more insight or kind of changed how you thought about hunting bucks in that terrain? What can you share with us, Devin?
I mean, just kind of starting from scratch. I mainly hunted off the ground. We would go pre-hang stands, some, in a rut funnel. You didn't necessarily
Now,
have.
did you guys? Sorry, I'm pausing you already. Did you? Your dad, was he a pretty big archery hunter also, or were you guys mainly
No,
firearm?
Dad didn't fool with any archery. I got into that on my own.
Okay, I was just curious.
Mhm. Um, I forgot where I was at.
You guys used to like, do the pre-hung stands. You were
Oh
saying
yeah,
go up in
yeah,
rut funnels, hang
yeah,
stands and stuff.
yeah. I mean, we would, pre-hang stands and rut funnels or proven, stands over the years. And kind of when I was little, I didn't know nothing. I didn't know nothing. I don't really know nothing now. I'm still learning. Uh, but
Always.
I've really, some things have really tuned in for me over the last couple of years. But one thing that was different about Daddy, he's this little scrappy fella, and he could, where there's laurel here, there's typically bull pines, what we call bull pines, yellow pine, bull pine, and some of them there won't be a limb for long ways, but some of them will have limbs way down them, and there's you're not breaking a limb on a bull pine. But anyways, he would climb up. He'd go into a new place and find some buck sign and on a steep, laurel face, and lots of times if you're going somewhere new, you're not really finding that until midday or after lunchtime. And he'd shoot up a bull pine, and kind of a mobile hunting where people use saddles and stands to get a tree and get up a tree. Well, he would just climb up and sit in the fork of a limb, get comfortable in a fork, and he killed several big bucks. Doing that. The first time in to a new place doing that. So I would, through my late teens and through my 20s, I would walk and walk and walk and walk and just look for buck sign and still hunt and try to get lucky and just, didn't have, I would scout with a gun in my hand. I would just, I'd mark stuff and find things for the future for next year during season. And I would find myself, getting into a good spot and not being able to get up a tree. And you don't have to get up a tree to kill a deer, but if you're going to hunt the thick stuff, you got to get up in the air. You got to get where you can shoot down into it. So lots of times, I'd be like, well, I could kill a deer if I get a tree, but I can't. So I'd keep on blundering and still hunting while I'd hear a deer take off or something, like, big body deer running off the side of the ridge, So I started getting into mobile stands. It just didn't. I tried and I tried for a couple of years. I even got the lightest hang-ons that money could buy, but I may hike the mountains for 3-4 days before I find a tree. 2, 3, 4 days before I find a tree or sign that's worthy enough to where I feel I don't want to just be guessing. I want to feel like I'm in the game. And
So you're carrying a stand around while you're scouting for 3 or
yeah,
4 days before you find the spot you is worthy of your time.
yeah, so your pack, I can't go in the mountains without everything I need, or I'm not going. I need my pack, I need my water, a couple snacks, my kill kit, my knife, and debone bag to pack a deer out, and I carry a little folding bone saw that I always have. Doesn't weigh nothing. It's wick tree gear. They're great. That's in case I kill a scrub that's not worthy of European mountain or mounting, and then instead of packing out that whole 15-20 pound head, I just skull cap him.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep that with me, and you got your clothes, your layering clothes, and that's something that really changed the ball game. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, because over the years through the late 90s and 2000s, I'd be carrying these big bibs and a big parka jacket, and the expensive Cabela's, and you still get cold and uncomfortable, and you can't get up and move. If you wanted to get up and move around the side of the ridge, you're like a big snowman, and you'd be sweating. And
And that shit was heavy. That shit was heavy
it would
too.
take up a whole 2,200 day pack.
Yeah.
Like, the pack would be ballooned out, and you couldn't hardly get nothing else in it. And you're going through the brush, and it's hitting one, and it was so aggravating. And finally, a couple of years ago, it took me about 2 years to gather all the pieces, but I finally got an ultralight layering system from Kuyu, and my pack is lighter than it's ever been, more room than I've ever had, and I'm way warmer, way drier, way more comfortable than I've ever been. The whole layering system, I can hunt from 0 to 0 degrees and up with wind and rain and snow, and I don't know off the top of my head, 6 or 7 pounds. And, the Down Pro balls them to a ball like this, the pants and the jacket. And then I always have a rain layer or moisture layer. I call it. I actually use my rain gear for wind as
Oh
much
yeah.
as for wind blocking when it's really nasty below freezing and winds howling 20-30 miles an hour. That really cuts that wind down. So I use it just as much as a wind layer.
And if you have that, like you just mentioned, that puffy down, if you put that puffy down and then anything that blocks wind, like you just talked about a rain jacket, but anything that'll block wind, you're going to be, I mean, as long as you're not too sweat up underneath that, you're good.
It's
You're
like a
good.
bug. It's like you're in a little sleeping bag, and
Mhm.
and it doesn't weigh you down. So that changed the ball game. I knew that took some time. It was expensive. I just didn't go buy everything. I'd get a piece or two here and a piece or two there, and it took me about 2 seasons to gather it up. But now that investment's been behind me for 2 years. And as far as I can tell, it's going to last. People, a lot of people, they just jump all over people that spend money on expensive hunting gear. But I'm like, this is what I love to do. I don't want to be carrying around a big, huge, bulky pack, and I want to be comfortable. If I get into a spot where I want to sit all day, I want to sit there comfortable all day. So that was one thing that felt like took me to another level, is because I could be comfortable, I could be light, and dry and warm. So I'm not saying go buy Kuiu, do your own research, but that was from Virginia. Um, and I just dove down a rabbit hole. I didn't know where I was going with my story.
Oh, you were talking about just like with stand hunting and carrying around your stand,
Yeah.
scouting with it on your back, and then
Yes.
finding a spot that you feel like is worth your time.
Yeah. So even when I got that lightweight hunting gear dialed in, I did the stands, just didn't work for me. Even the lightest stands and the lightest sticks, because it's on the back of your pack, it's top heavy. It just didn't work for me. I would try to still hunt and scout hunt and trying to find somewhere to get up a tree, and I would hunt 2-3 days and never even deploy the stand, and it's just weighing me down and fatiguing me for. So last year, I'm like, the only answer is a saddle, because I can throw that thing in the pack. It's not back heavy, top heavy on my pack, and I can strap everything else right to the back of the platform. Right now, I just made some upgrades, and I can get 16, 18 foot, which is all the higher you need to be for a gun. And it's all the higher I need. I can get higher if I want to. I can get 20, 22 foot, but I can get 16, 18 foot for 10.3 pounds. It's everything to hunt, from the ground hunting.
Oh, your ropes.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So that's, so I got into that last year, and that's what really changed the ball game, is that I can go scout these thick spots and find what looks good. And then like last year, I killed a real good buck. And if I wouldn't have been able to get up the tree, I'd be like, man, this looks good, but I can't kill him here, sitting here. So I'd have just kept on hunting around the side of the mountain, or went on down through there and busted him out. And
I just got a question for you, Devin, on your, like, the mountain laurel. Most of the people you talk to or you hear about who hunt the stuff, the mountain country that has that, it seems like that's always the key, right? Like, these deer like to pile up into that mountain laurel. It's thick, it's cover, it's food around it. I've never been to mountain laurel. I've never seen it in person. Like, when you find a patch of it, if you've got like buck sign leading to mountain laurel, when you're scouting it, are you just scouting the edges of it? Is it like open enough that you can walk through it when you're scouting it? Are you walking through that stuff? Or is it like, in my brain, it's like a tangle. So like you don't even go in it, but like, tell me what it is as a northerner who doesn't know that shit.
The thing about mountain laurel and rhododendron, those are two different things. And then mountain laurel, there's several different styles of it. There's this knee-high stuff that's flimsy and moves out the way. There's, 5-6 foot stuff that's flimsy and it moves out the way, and it's kind of thin and sparse. And then there's this old growth laurel that's usually high elevation, that is, it's like trees, and the limbs are stiff, and it grabs your clothing and your pack, and you can't move through it. And and there's some stuff that's too thick for a deer. There's there's different areas, different mountains, different elevations have different styles of mountain laurel. So when you say mountain laurel, there's several different types that's actually out there. and I don't understand. I've always wondered how it gets to being from this type to this type, but elevation, age has a lot to do with it. I like stuff that I can maneuver through. That's huntable. I mean, it can't be so thick that you can't even get through it. And rhododendron, I don't even really I might hunt the edge of it, or I don't really fool around with much rhododendron. Rhododendron's usually in deep black hollows or down around the creeks where it's cold and dark.
Shady shit. Yeah.
Yeah, shady, dark. Your dominant is laurel.
Okay.
But I like stuff that isn't. It doesn't have to be crazy thick. It just got to be that security blanket.
Okay.
And also here, there's a lot of sapling trees high up elevation that provide cover, and it doesn't. And here it's so steep and big. You can hunting anywhere from which out west guys are going to laugh, but you can be 1,000 foot to 4,500 foot.
That's a big range for whitetail country.
Yeah, majority hunting's around 2,000, 2,500. I'd say 1,500 to 2,500 is where a lot of the hunting's done. Not saying the specific elevation, but that's most of the tops. And then
Gotcha.
you have a few mountains that pull up and is 3,000-4,000 foot. It's a lot of these places you get back in there, the deer, it doesn't have to be cover based. They can lay on the side of a big steep face, and it's so steep, especially if it's dry, they hear you for a mile coming. You can't get close to them, and they can see way off of it, smell like billy goats. I mean, deer. I found deer tracks and seen deer shit, in rock batters and stuff. You think, what? There ain't nothing here, and then you look down and there's a pile of a deer shit and a rock batter, and you're like using all four to get through it without breaking a leg. They go some incredible places that they can go.
Wildly versatile animal, man. When you think about the kind of shit across the country that they live in, and that they not only live in, but I mean, the mature animals especially just become so good at figuring out where they're safe, right? Like where people don't get to them, or where they have all those advantages. That's what they're built for. And as soon as those deer get a couple seasons on them, some of them just get damn right almost impossible to kill.
It's really a romantic sport. I love hunting the mountains. I've never traveled a deer hunt because I just have no desire. There's pieces of me that want to go check out some, but it's going to be stuff that's kind of like this. It's not. I don't really have a desire for Midwest. Nothing against it. My heart's just in the mountains. I would rather kill a 4.5-year-old rack, 110-inch A point that I got lucky with and skin out on the ground and packed out. That means so much more to me, killing 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 miles back in the mountains. That's just so rewarding when it comes together. And then, when you get one bigger than that, it's even more of a thrill.
Oh,
but my heart's just in the mountains. It's where I want to be. Like, I've had a couple places of private hunt over the years, and when I would be there, I feel so out of place. Like the whole time I'm there, I'm like, I should be up on the mountain somewhere.
It almost feels like you're cheating, like you're looking at your neighbor's paper in high school or something. It just feels like, man, nothing against it, but once you've done what you've done, I feel like that's the kind of mindset you get.
Yeah, I mean, I killed a pretty big one several years back on private, and there wasn't nothing special about the private. It was just a big mountainside, but that's limiting who can be there and everything else. And I was excited for a little bit, but then it just left me. It was just like I would give anything for that to been a mile or two back in the mountain somewhere.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, it's just what I love to do. It's crazy. It's really, I mean, majority of the time, even the really success, the guys that I look up to, they'll tell you that most of the time they think, what am I doing here? This is crazy. This is stupid. But it really, I could see why not many people come and do this stuff that didn't grow up or have some sort of very small percentage of people get into it, not growing up or being around it or have some sort of influence,
Yeah, I can guarantee you that any one of our Midwest states, Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, like we've got an influx of out-of-state hunters who want to come hunt the terrain around the farm country. I highly doubt you have a ton of people flocking to the mountains of Virginia to climb 2,500 feet and hunt whitetails to shoot
Yeah.
a smaller rack deer. You know what I mean? Like something that's kind of.
Some areas get hunted hard. There'll be some camps, but it's not nothing like when I was a kid. I remember it. I got to see the end of the hunting camps. What I'm not meaning, I'm not necessarily meaning structures. I mean in like army tents, campers, tents, tarp tents. Through the 80s before I was born and into the 90s when I was around. If there was a gravel spot, a gravel pull off 2 foot wide, there was an army tent thrown in it. There was pickup trucks and people camping on the national forest, and they'd have poles strung up in trees to hang their deer from, and it just slowly our deer pot. I think what happened is the deer and turkeys and game, it went up and it peaked for a while, and people thought that's the way it should always be. And then the coyotes, there's 3 does going through the yard.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I think the coyotes got started getting exploding from the 2000 on, and the federal government had a bunch of handcuffs put on them by the tree people about jumping through hoops to cut timber. So the timber cut back a little bit for a while, and the coyotes was a new predator, and plus there were some pretty liberal seasons and bag limits. It still is here, really. I think everything just kind of come to a head and had a couple one bad winter, 1 or 2 bad winters, especially I think it was 2008, killed a lot of game. Just really cold, snowed a couple feet and just stayed on the ground, didn't melt. Just everything kind of came to a head, and I think it stabilized. And but with those numbers that dropped, the traveling people, because people would travel in-state, in-state hunters would travel from the flatlands or southeast, and travel, and then we had lots of people from West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania that would come here and hunt too. But that's kind of petered out a little bit. But there's some areas, some mountains that does get hammered with pressure, but at the same rate, you can get by yourself just as fast at the same rate. I mean, you can run into people and you can get by yourself just as quick. I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh no, I
But
hear you. I hear you.
yeah, but I mean, there's not droves of people from other states coming to pursue mountain deer in Virginia. Why would you really? I mean, it's got to be something you goal oriented or grew up around doing, and it's in your blood, really.
And it is a little bit sad to see the in-state traveling deer camps kind of wither away. And I think you and I are similar in age. And in northern Wisconsin, on our national forest, we used to have tent camps all over the place. Everybody knew you get 20 guys camping here in this tent and another, and then the Monday or Tuesday of our rifle season after the opening weekend. Everybody drive around, stop in, share a couple beers, see what's on there, meet pull. Oh, it must be a good year. The Armstrongs got a whole bunch of bucks. And that was just what you did.
That was a big time. It was a big time to be alive.
And that doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen the same anymore. It's kind of sad. But
different. And seasons so scattered out now too, as the decades went on. Archeries was lengthened and added, and early muzzleloader seasons and rifle, and then you got late muzzleloader. Like I think when I was a kid, I don't even think that there was 1 week of early muzzleloader. Then it was like out for 2 weeks, and you had rifle, and it was over. And just so now people don't necessarily like. You had that rifle season where everybody in the whole world took off and quit their job and hunted and went to camp, and that's when season was, and it was right then. Now everything's stretched out, so it's not that has something to do with it too.
100%. I agree, and just the ease of communication where guys used to come together and get together every deer season. Now guys, on the phone, it's just so easy to communicate. It just changed a lot of the dynamics. All changed. But in talking with that and kind of like the feeling you mentioned of getting that mountain buck and like just how there's no better feeling in the world. You got a story about a deer that maybe you're particularly proud of, or one that was a challenge that you've just made you, like really gives you the feels one that when you look back at like the deer you've taken, one that you're like really hang your hat on, that was like a, you know, a feat well earned. You want to walk us through maybe a cool story that you had with one of those?
Yeah, it's a long story. So, um, it was the biggest Nash forest buck I'd killed until last year, really. But this was see, it's 2024. This was like 2016 ish. It's been 8 or 10 years ago now when I killed him, but I actually had never hunted this mountain. I've been interested in it for a while, just hadn't made it there, and I think it was one of the years. It was a down year. A lot of people wasn't having a lot of luck, wasn't seeing a lot of movement. We had no mass that, and plus we was coming off one of those bad winters. We had a lot of game die, and I was really jumping around, going different counties. Hunt 4, 5, 6 counties radius, and going to different mountains. And when I say hunting, some days I wouldn't dare call it hunting. I was just hiking and blundering and just looking for buck sign, looking for deer, and then I would hit the brakes. But I didn't really. If I didn't see a whole lot, didn't see what I liked, I just kept trucking,
Keep
and
moving.
and trying to get lucky. In the process of looking for deer, and so my dad had hunted this area of this particular mountain 2 or 3 years after it was some big sign in there, and he didn't have no luck, so he quit hunting it. A couple years went by, and I said, I might go try. I've been thinking about trying that mountain. He said, well, you can go back up in that country that I fooled around in for a while. And I looked at the map, and and I'm good with maps. It just always was good with maps. And I carried a Garmin. It was actually a Garmin for coon, for hound hunting. It tracked your
Okay.
dogs. It was Garmin Astro, but when I wasn't hound hunting, I carried it. It was with me all the time. So when I was coon hunting, I was marking turkey sign and buck sign. I was finding and at night coon hunting, and then I was carrying it hunting. So I had stuff all over. I still have it, but I was
It
carrying
just
that before.
acted as
Yeah,
your normal like GPS.
yeah, I was carrying that before all the phone apps came out, on X and all that stuff. So I lived and died with that thing. But I looked at the map, and I just, Dad says, in here, and I come up with a plan, and got up next morning. It was cold, real cold, and it was raining into the night, and then it got higher elevations. It started getting a layer of ice on the brush, and I started up the mountain. It was still, I had about 2.5 mile walk, and it was still, I think more like two. Um, it was spitting rain, and I had a long walk to make and a lot of elevation gain to pull. So I was rearranging my backpack, and I put the rain layer on, and I had my bibs in my pack, but I left my insulation layer in the truck. And so I don't realize this till later. So it's gray light. No, I'm going up the mountain in the dark. I get up this certain point that I had marked, and I wanted to drop down in this hollow, and in the head of this big hollow, it was like um, kind of. I don't know if you can see this. It was kind of like a three-way ridge, two big main ridges, and this little small point right in the head of it.
Okay.
And that small point in the head of this hollow, the gypsy moss had um, killed some trees, which opened up the sunlight, made like a natural clear cut. And so, I just made this plan. I was going to get on the side of this big ridge, and then I could look into the head of all that and watch it throughout the day. So it's cold as hell. I'm dropping down in there, and I remember the wind was in my face, but it was so loud, and it was that stiff laurel and greenbriers, and it's that stiff high elevation laurel that you got to move out the way. And I say, man, everything is down in this canyon or big hollers can hear me coming. And I said, well, you know what? It's a long day. Maybe they'll think I'm a buck coming through this brush. I'm gonna get down in here, spook what I spook, and it's a huge mountain, so something could run a doe in or come in, be over the next ridge, not even know I dropped in there. So I just stick with it, going down in there, and I remembered I'd picked out on the next on that ridge, so I'll get about up in there. That'll be about right. I'm looking, and we kind of cover as much ground as I could because it's rifle season, and so I picked out about where I wanted to be, and I was 8, 10 steps from that tree. And at this point, the winds hadn't started howling. It was kind of like, I don't know, the calm before the storm. It was calm. It got quiet. The rain kind of trickled out, and then it kind of started. getting like icy. And I heard something over like my left shoulder, and I stopped in my tracks, and I was listening, and it was like brush. And then I was listening, I heard it, and then like my eyes, like if I could have seen myself, my eyes were like this. I'm like, that's rack tickling icy brush. Like, in fractions of a second, I'm thinking, well, if his rack's big enough to make noise on the brush, this is a big brush. So I sat down on the side of this. It's kind of open. It's not open. It's a lot of sapling trees on this ridge. No laurel, but it's kind of sapling. And I sat down, and I remember this. I heard this sound, and I jerked my gloves off, and I didn't know how long I was going to be pinned there. And then about that time, that's kind of when the wind started coming in, and I'm sitting there, and I hear this deer coming through this brush, which would be about 150 yards on that little finger ridge in the middle of that head of that hollow. And then it stops, and I just sat there, and I'm sitting there, gun on fire, and I'm trying not to breathe on my scope and listen. I'm like, man, I just need to see a flicker of you so I can get keyed in on you. And there was about a quarter of inch of snow on at this point, just a nice little layer of snow where stuff was. I'm like, why can't I see you? I couldn't see him. And I was like, I wonder if he's waiting for me to move or make a noise.
Yeah.
And so, and granted, I didn't have a tree. I just kind of popped down the side of the ridge. So I reached down and found a stick, and I popped that stick, and he started coming again. And then he stops again, and he stands there, and I can just envision him like working his ears and listening and looking and just standing there, just flicking, working his ear, just listening. And I give him a minute or two, which felt like a minute or two, might have been 30 seconds. I'm like, well, it worked, and so I reached down real slow, found another stick in the lee, snapped it, and like he came, and I'm like, man, why can't I see you? I should be able to catch a flicker, and then I can scope you and find a hole, see what kind of rack you got, find a hole and get a bullet in you. And I never caught a flicker or nothing. He stopped. And what amazes me about deer is they can be as loud as they want to. Like if they want to be heard, they'll be dragging their toes and plowing through the brush. But if he wants to be quiet, I've watched him walk around the side of a steep, straight up and down ridge with bone dry, crunchy leaves and never make a noise.
Quiet as could be.
Yeah, just walk right by you, not making noise. But if he wants to be lazy and loud, he can. You'll hear that buck cadence, and your heart's pumping before you even see him because it's a buck. But anyways, I sat there for like 30 minutes, and my hands it's like I looked at my phone later. The closest town was about 1,800, 2,000 foot lower, and the wind was howling. There was gusts where the trees were just rocking and kind of freak. I had to make sure. Because the gypsy
moths. Yep.
So I had to watch where I was sitting because I was thinking, one of these old dead trees will blow over on me. But the closest little town, a couple miles by the Crow, the phone was saying it was 19 degrees there, and I'm 18,000 foot higher. So it was raw.
Colder.
It was, with the wind chill, wind howling. It was single digits, real feel for sure. And so then he leaves out. He comes in there and makes all this noise, and then he like leaves and doesn't make a sound. So I sat like 30 minutes, like hands freezing, like waiting for him. So finally I just give up. I'm like, he had to have worked out. So I get back to that tree that I wanted, get situated, and then I'm getting my heavy bibs on, getting everything zipped up, I unloosen my boots so they aren't tight and letting blood flow, and I go in the pack to get my insulation layer, and it's not there. I'm like, man. I had like an Under Armour cold gear on at the time, a fuzzy shirt, a long sleeve fuzzy shirt, which is a pretty warm shirt, and then I was going to have a parka like jacket and then the rain layer. Well, I didn't have that parka jacket, but my adrenaline was going enough, and I'm into it now. I'm sitting here all day. He'll push this doe or something through here sometime or another. Because he didn't smell me, he didn't see me. So, maybe he'll work through here sometime today. And so that lasted for a couple hours. And, around lunchtime, my feet were frozen. Then my upper body was struggling. And I was like, you know what? I got to get up and make a little walk. I'm going to get up and make a little loop. So I was like, I got to go over here and see. I'm going to go over here and see what happened. And so
were you sitting on the ground by that tree, Devin?
Yeah,
Did you just plop down on the ground?
Yeah. Well, when I first plopped down, when I first heard it, I just plopped down on the side of the open ridge because I didn't want to get caught.
Yep.
But then then once it all went away and I did get to see it against a tree, but I actually walked over there. I'm like, I can't take it. I got to go over here and see what happened. So I go over there. There's this big, huge bed melted in the snow, and it didn't have. And after that happened, it was spitting snow, kind of blowing sideways, and there still wasn't a flake in it. It was this big, huge bed, and then there was this little tiny doe bed about 10 yards down the hill from it. And so I'm like, well, what just happened? And I've told this story. I feel like he's such a bullshitter. Like, no, this is what happened. So I'm thinking, like, did this buck hear me come in there and not? I sounded like a buck coming off this ridge, and he just wanted to come over there and say, "Hey, I don't want to fight you, but I will if I have to." Like, I always think about what happened there, or if they were just being deer and it had nothing to do with it, and I'm just putting this stuff in my head. But anyways, so and then I walk up over the ridge, get my blood flowing, get my feet warmed up. I probably wasn't gone 30 minutes or until an hour. It wasn't an hour, 30 to 45 minutes. Go back to the tree and sit down. And I sat there all evening. It's getting to be about an hour to dark, roughly. And then the wind was howling, 30, 40 mile an hour gusts. You couldn't use your ears. So it wears you out because you can't stop looking. You got it. It wears you out because you can't just rest and listen with your ears. You have to just you look down the mountain and then you scan back up. And I had snow, so that helped. So I'd scan up the mountain and I look back down the mountain. Well, I look down the mountain about an hour dark, about prime time, and I see a flicker of black moving fast. And I'm thinking I'm thinking buck chasing doe. Like, so I get all excited, get my gun up, looking. It's a big old bear. He comes up the hollow and runs up that middle finger ridge in the head of that hollow. And he runs up on that finger ridge. In bear season, it was legal to kill a bear. I was like, I thought about it, like, no, I'm way too far back in here. And I did find, when I made that little walk and checked that middle ridge, I found a big, huge tree the size of my knee, ripped to shreds in there, and a couple trees, that big round just snapped off. I'm like, this is his lair. He's living in this middle finger ridge, this dead gypsy moth pat, So that bear runs up on that middle finger ridge and he stops and he looks back down. So I don't know what happened. And I don't know if the deer running around jumped him up or what. I ain't never figured that part out. He was running like he spooked. Now the wind was coming up the mountain, so there might have been a hunter down in the low woods, that he caught his wind and pushed him up the mountain. So anyways, he works his way off and I'm thinking, man, I've never been, I come up in here in the dark. I've never scouted, never hunted this. I was just trying to come up with excuses to get up and move and get warm.
Get a little warm flowing through that frozen body.
Yeah, I convinced myself, hey, I'm going to hunt. Dad always taught me to hunt along the creek, the creeks to cover up your noise. And so I thought, well, I'll get down the bottom of that hollow and get near the creek, and then I'll just take my time and hunt my way out of here, get lucky, get a shot at a buck, jump a buck, just trying to get lucky at that, and then I also convinced myself that I'll hunt my way out and I'll learn this hollow and look for other potential stands. So I'm probably 250 yards from where I'd set all day. I made it down the bottom of that hollow and got down, and the water's roaring because it rained hard the day before, into the night, turned into ice, which eventually turned into snow. So that runoff creek in the bottom of this hollow is roaring. And so and plus my feet's still trying to wake up. I sit there single digits all day. My gear wasn't that great then. My boots wasn't that great. So, I was sitting there fighting it, wiggle my toes nonstop. I was so hyper fixated, like, hey, I got to hang it out because this buck's going to come back through here today. So, if that wouldn't happen, I'd probably been gone in a couple hours, been hunting around the mountain and looking for something else. And so I get down the bottom of this hollow. I'm working my way out, and I'm just taking a couple steps, and I'm stopping and glancing up on this big side, and I check this other side, and then I take a couple steps, watching where I'm stepping because it's nothing but rocks under the leaves. It's taking my time, and I had just started this tactic, like I just got into this hunting my way out, and I wasn't just blundering, I was hunting. And, I just looked down at my foot placement, and my hat bill's like this, whatever I had on, and my head's coming back up to look down the hollow, and I catch a flicker of a black deer or, a deer. I just catch a would be about 75 yards. I'm trying to remember, about 75, less than 100, probably about 75, 80 yards. And I throw the gun up. I see the deer go through a hole, so I pop it to where the deer's going. I see a doe, and she's little doe, and she's got her mouth hanging wide open. Like,
oh yeah.
I don't know how big or small, but she's being chased by a buck. So my wind, this is the bottom of the hollow. My wind's kind of blowing just a little sideways down that hollow, and she's coming up. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at her. She's in my peripheral. I got the gun. I think I got the gun on. No, it ain't on fire. I'm just looking over top of it, looking. I'm like, where is the buck? I'm like, she's coming. And I finally get this big bodied, black, dark looking deer, because it's the sun's going down. And I'm like, there you are. And I hits a hole, and I'll just see rack. I just see points, and I don't look back again. I'm just like, get a bullet in him. I'm not worried about the rack anymore. I've seen enough to know this is a big buck. And you know how a couple stagger, they could be 100 yards apart, but they'll stagger and make a wall. Well, she was coming, and like, she's in bow range, and my wind's right there, and she's coming into it. I'm like, I can't see him. He's coming up this wall, and I'm worried that she's going to hit my wind, spin and take him back. Well, instead of spinning and taking him back down the hollow, she like hits the brakes, goes, whew, and she turns. Instead of coming up the hollow in a gradual grade, she turns and goes straight up this steep ridge into this black laurel. She goes into that black laurel, straight up that ridge, and he comes out behind that wall about 35 yards. And I'm guaranteed the trigger. I got him dead, and it's a big open spot. But I could see in his body language that he was putting the brakes on. And, I tightened up on the trigger, and the gun was going to go off, and I could tell he was stopping. And he stopped, and his mouth, I'll never forget, his mouth was hanging open, and, his rib cage was going like this. And it was like he was saying, you bitch, why are you going up there? He's because he was way behind her. He was 40, 50, 60, 50 yards behind her. He couldn't keep up with her. He was doing, and that deer didn't have an ounce of fat on him. He didn't have a speck of fat,
really,
at his tailbone, because that'd be the last place they have fat is around their tailbone. He didn't have, that was the year there was no mast.
Fellas, that's why you don't go after the marathon chicks. They can all around you. They make you work.
But so it's about 35 yards, and I stick it right in the center of his shoulder and touch the trigger. I was carrying a 300 short magnum at the time, and he reared straight up and was flipping backwards. And Dad raised me, you keep shooting until he stops moving. Don't ever take for granted. You think you made a perfect shot. If he's still moving, for one, to kill the animal as quickly as humanly as possible. But I didn't even hit him. Like, I was like, I seen that rack. I put a perfect bullet in the center of his shoulder, and I worked the action. Boom! I shot again.
That's nice.
This is the kicker of the story. The buck, flips, stops moving. I rack another shell. I know I got him. And in that fraction of a second, I catch some out of the corner of my eye. I look up. Here's a bear coming right where the deer come from. And like, I'm trying to process all this. Like, was this bear? Because there was no mass, zero mass crop, nowhere that year in the country. And I'm like, trying to process all this afterwards. Like, I'm sitting there looking at my deer, and I'm still thinking about, what was that bear doing? And I've always wondered, was that bear tagging behind that buck, waiting for him to get worn down, and then he could basically just walk up to him and grab him around the throat? And like,
yeah,
why was that bear right on their path? Like,
well, yeah, and like you said, if there's no mass crop and that bear didn't have a lot to eat, he's looking for whatever means necessary to fill the gut before winter.
But that's another part of the story that people probably think I'm like bullshitting. No, that like that was like a whole cluster of like, what just happened? Why is this bear like he hits my wind like right where the doe hit my wind, like 25 yards where the doe, and cuts up the same steep right in the lower where the doe went.
No shit.
So yeah, that's like 2 seconds. All that happens, and the bear's gone. I'm like, I'm back to my buck. Like, I flip it on safety, and I'm going to check my buck out. But he didn't have real, he didn't have real long points, 6-7 inch tines, and just real heavy mass. He was 140 pounds dressed with no fat. Side note, if he'd have been healthy, he'd probably had some fat. He might have been 160-pound deer, mountain buck. I don't know if he wouldn't have been, dressed. Maybe better some years, but he just had a big bulldozer front end, big, huge chest, big and tiny back end. He was a mature deer. And
That's super cool.
His right eye was, I guess it got tined. But it was just a whole wave of emotion. I mean, there wasn't no scouting involved to this hunt. There wasn't no preparation or trail cameras. It was just good old mountain hunting. And then I wouldn't have been in that area if Dad wouldn't have said go. That's where I just started. I'm like, well, I'll start there, and then I don't know where I'm going to end up that day, but I'll start here. Well, just the only reason why I stayed there all day, and was that the buck, because it was coming right back up the same hollow. They was going right to
the buck bed with the smaller doe bed down below. I mean,
yeah.
That's what I was thinking is when he heard you coming down, did she get up to inspect the noise of you, or was it him, like trying to fight off the doe, and then maybe she peeled out the back and he just, I got to go with her. So
there was just about this much snow, so I could see the bed, but then there was enough snow that like I couldn't track. I don't know if it makes sense because the leaves were deep, and I don't know, but I couldn't make out the tracks well of what happened there, but I could see the beds and could see where they went, but it was just hard to read. Obviously they didn't come around the hill towards me, or I'd have seen them, and I could tell they worked that way, but she was heading straight right up to that middle finger ridge, that gypsy moth kill. So I've always wondered that was a long day. Was that a buck that'd been running this doe for a couple miles around the side of the mountain? Totally different buck, or was this that buck? No one knows that answer, but I always wanted to think that was him coming, pushing her back into there. Cause that's exactly, I was looking at it, like I turned around and looked, it was that middle finger up in the head of this big hollow. That's where she was going until she hit my wind at about 20, 25 yards. And she stomped the brakes and snorted. And I was expecting her to wheel and taking back down the hollow, but evidently she didn't want to be going back. She would rather to went up that steep face than go back towards him, because her mouth was hanging wide open and his mouth was hanging wide open, and he could not keep up with her. She, like I said, she was 40, 50 yards ahead of him.
Yeah.
But
it makes you wonder when you play through those hypotheticals of like what could have happened, what did happen. How I'm just going down a complete wild tangent, but how fresh was that eye wound that you said he might have gotten like gouged? Was that like fresh?
It was fresh.
Man, immediately the story that plays out in my mind is they spook out of their preferred bedding spot where he had her pinned down. And maybe like when they busted out of that bowl away from you, maybe that buck could have gotten a fight, with his hot doe. Bear heard the fight, who knows? Or like, he got worn down fighting another deer to win the doe, and that's why he couldn't keep up. Who knows, man? There could have been a whole freaking drama, soap opera of deer going on the other side of the
My
house.
taxidermist at the time said he had buckshot in his neck and chest.
No shit.
Yeah. So I'm like, for one, I was impressed that someone was up in there with just a shotgun, which some of the places that's what you need, really. But I'm like, not many people's up in this, not many people's carrying buckshot and shotguns now. Although that there is some spots where I'm like, that's exactly what I need right here. I need the shotgun and buckshot for this spot, but there's no real crazy tactics. There wasn't a whole lot of. I'm still learning right now, but I was definitely on my learning curve. Then I'd killed a couple of nice bucks, but that was my biggest national forest buck at the time. And he was for a long time. But yeah. But I'm just like the takeaways. There wasn't really just sometimes when it comes to mountain hunting in those early years, probably kind of like an apprenticeship, like 10 year span, it's a lot of learning curves, and it's all about what you want to get out of it and how much you want to advance with it. But through those 10 years, of course you hunt when you're a teenager and stuff, but I don't really consider it. That's just blundering and trying your best, and you're limited with school and stuff like that. You don't get, but one of those several years through my early 20s and through my 20s was just a lot, just being out there. I didn't know, my dad had told me a lot of the secrets, and I knew a lot of stuff, and I knew what he was doing, but I couldn't replicate it per se. Even though I knew exactly how he was doing what he's doing, I was having trouble finding my way of mountain buck hunting. I was trying to be like other hunters, or not to be like them, but their tactics. I'm trying to be successful, but I wasn't necessarily happy with the results or happy with what it, I just wasn't. I was losing a little bit of, I don't know how to explain it. It took time for me to find myself in deer hunting, which I found probably the past 4 or 5 years, of how I like the mountain buck hunt, why I like the mountain buck hunt, for what reason why I like mountain. I mean, I truly, I want to see deer and I want to be in deer, but the time goes by. I remember being a kid and the day just dragging on. You'd ate all your sandwiches by mid, and it just, cold long day. But now it's like that. Like the day goes by so fast in the mountains deer hunting. Like I wish I had 4 or 5 more hours. I'm like, man, it went by so fast today, because I'm thinking I'm moving. I may be still hunting all day. And I've had a lot of luck going in the woods late, especially if I don't have a plan or know what tree I want to be up or what spot I want to be sitting on the ground and have a plan. I have no confidence issues. I've killed most of my bucks still hunting. Um, slipping around, moving around, getting lucky, buck run a doe right to you, see him before he sees you, or uh, I might lean against a tree for 10, 15 minutes, just stand there, lean against a tree or sit down, and then something happens. You hear buck running the doe in the laurel, or another hunter could run you a deer. There's a lot of luck per se involved with big wood setting. When we don't get the snow here reliably, we get skiffs of snow. So we don't get. I actually tracked down my first buck this year in West
Cool.
Virginia. I'd killed a lot of bucks in snow, but not actually tracked a deer up. So that's a whole other story. He was a scrub, but I done had a good year. It was basically the last day that I was going to get to hunt in the deer season, this past deer season, and I made my mind up. As long as he's got a rack, if I track this deer up and get a shot, I'm killing this deer, happily. And I tracked him up, and
That's cool.
it was a scrub buck, scrub rack, 8 point, I think. I can't remember how many points. I think it was 7 or 8 point, 2.5-year-old buck. But I was tickled plumb to death. Like I was happy because it was so cool how that morning played out and that hunt played out. And there wasn't a
I
lot of
think
deer.
I think you said it really well just a minute ago, Devin, when you were talking about, and tracking is one of those things that I feel like if you are somewhat of an accomplished still hunter, that translates really well to tracking. But like still hunting is one of those things. And that happened to me when I was young. My dad is a big still hunter, so he would always tell me how to do it. But it's one of those things that like you can have the person who's the most successful still hunter in the world and knows all the tactics. And they can tell you how to do it. But until you go out and figure out what works for you and knowing the woods well enough to know when to go slow. Otherwise, if you just walk slow all day, you're never going to get anywhere. You got to know when to slow down and when to speed up. And that finding
you have to
your own
hunt. You have to
style,
hunt. Yeah.
finding your own style, like you mentioned, like no matter what the tactic is, you got to figure out how you and like how your brain works is going to make that tactic work for you. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
I had people tell me, you can't kill big bucks still hunting. You got to be sitting down, sitting still. And there's a lot of truth to that. But I'm like, no, I've killed some nice bucks still hunting, But also the part of mountain hunting that I love is the adventure of it. I love the adventure of mountain hunting, going to, like, I've killed a lot of my best bucks the first time hunting a new spot. And what is cool, what's romantic about that is, if that mountain was your home mountain, you knew every inch of it, you over time develop a sense of you have to be in this tree or this area to kill the big one. But when you go into there with fresh eyes, not knowing nothing about it, you're looking at that mountain different than someone's been hunting 20, 30 years.
You create your own bias in those areas that you hunt. You really do. And it's hard to get over those.
Yeah, because you create your own bias, of hunting a spot of an area that you come. But so when you go in there unbiased, you look at stuff that the local or someone that's hunted that area for a long time, he wouldn't even pick his head up. He'd just be head down going to where he's going. But I may look at that totally different. When I'm in a new spot, it's new, fresh. I'm looking at things different, and you can kill a buck, a big buck, where the local may not even hunt hunt that spot. So I like going new places, like going new mountains. And if things aren't working, I'll just go make my own luck. If I don't kill nothing, it's fine. I'm going to learn something. I'm going to see some new country, maybe find a buck stand for the future. Because I'll find, like, I look for rut funnels. I look for stuff that looks hot and that will pattern the deer year to year to year to year, that I could market and come back on a whim, especially since I got into saddle hunting and stuff. I can go back. I can go in the dark to this tree and give it a shot for a day, and on a whim, go into this spot. Looks like a really good run funnel. I can go in there and give it a shot. I can sit there all day,
Heck yeah.
in the dark, and give it a go. And lots of times that's what produces, is just something on a whim. And I tried a couple years running cameras and scouting and doing this and that, and I really lost a lot of love for it. Like, it became work, and it was getting in the way of family and responsibilities. And now I just hunt freely. Like, I just go and use my instincts, and I just start. It puts me behind the 8 ball. Yeah, but we got 3 kids. I work a full-time shift work job. I run my own business on my days off and after night shift, and when I'm working my day job, I'm taking phone calls and scheduling work. Um, and I do septic work. So when someone's toilet's not working, it's backing up in their house. It's a service. This is a service job. So
You got to go now.
you gotta go help those people. But when deer season comes, I do shut it down, because at some point someone's got to take vacation. So through the rest of the year, early fall, when a lot of people's bow hunting and scouting, in late summer, I'm saving my time to be away from family, to stress the family. My time away for when it counts.
I think you said it well, and I think we'll be able to wrap up on that note. Of that is, sometimes doing all the running the cameras, going in and checking spots over and over, that's not only can wear on you your time away from family when you're not even really hunting, but also it takes away that whole. You just mentioned you've had so much luck your first time in. That element of surprise and not leaving your scent in there and not educating the deer is when most big bucks are killed, when it's your first time in and you haven't gone in, when you're running cameras and doing presets. Every time you go in there, you're just giving them a little bit more and a little bit more reason to stay out of there. And in the big woods, in the mountains, they don't have to walk through any spot. They have options. So I think you nailed it with that. We've been recording just over an hour. I definitely got to get up to my kids.
Yeah.
Right now. Devin, I really appreciate you sitting down and finding some time in your schedule to talk to me. If you ever want to hop on again later in the season, we can talk more. I would love that. But thanks a lot for sitting down and telling us some stories today. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. I guess the takeaway is just try to find your lane, what makes you happy, what you want to get out of it. Don't feel like you got to do this and that or try to be somebody. Just be yourself, but also not just lollygagging. Go and learn and fine tune your instincts and your technique. So really, when you go do it, you're doing it with intent. Hunting with intent, scouting with intent, still hunting with intent, whatever it may be. But yeah, I guess that's a little takeaway. But hey, man,
That's
I appreciate
excellent.
it. We can do another one sometime, a postseason update or something, because I think I like what you're doing with the stories. It's not so much tactic driven that I don't know how you can talk about tactics anymore. There's been podcasts that's been going on for a decade, and every tactic has been talked about. But so I think the story stuff is really cool. What you're doing, it's pretty awesome. So.
Well, thank you very much, and best of luck this season. Good luck finding some time in the woods. Get away from that work. Go start taking your vacation. It's coming.
Yeah, man.
It's coming, buddy.
Hey, good luck to you. I hope you get a big one. Get a couple.
All right, we'll be in touch. Good talking with you, Devin. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Take care.